The woman looks at us. Her hair is reddish blonde. It is decorated with a large pink motif, a ribbon or a flower. Pearl drop earrings, a narrow black ribbon around the neck, and an oval pearl. On her right wrist, a locket hangs from a bangle of beaten gold. With the tips of her fingers, the woman holds a large, flowery silk shawl spread beneath her. Naked, she wears only her yellow silk mules, edged with blue braid. One of them has fallen on the bed. Wearing a pink dress with a white collar and a headscarf, a black servant leans towards the woman. She brings a bouquet of flowers wrapped in white paper. At the foot of the bed, a very young cat stands on the tips of its paws. The woman's left palm lies flat against her stomach. The fingers rest on her right thigh. The painting, dated 1863, is signed Edouard Manet. A friend of Manet's, Antonin Proust, said, "One Sunday we were lying on the riverbank at Argenteuil. Some women were bathing. Manet stared at the flesh of the women as they came out of the water. Apparently I must paint a nude. Well, I'll paint them a nude." He painted two, the bath and Olympia. Later renamed Le Déjeuner sur l'herbe, the bath was inspired by Titian's pastoral scene, then attributed to Giorgione, and an engraving by Marcantonio Raimondi after Raphael's The Judgment of Paris. Manet turned the mythological figures into mundane picnickers. In the company of two fully clothed men, a nude woman sits in an unconventional position, revealing her large feet and the folds of her stomach and neck. She looks indifferently towards the viewers. This woman is Victorine Meurent. Manet met Victorine in 1862. She was 18 years old. Independent, bohemian, of easy virtue, she agreed to pose for the painter. Manet gave her the role of a street singer whom he'd met one day munching on cherries outside a nightclub. Another portrait of Victorine highlights her tawny hair, her brown eyes, and her pale complexion. And this narrow black ribbon around her neck appears in several other paintings. In Mademoiselle Cinq, the costume of Vienne Espardo, Victorine puts on men's clothing for a bullfighting scene. In 1863, she was the nude in Le Bain and in Olympia. A young black woman posed in the studio for The Servant. A sketch has survived. Later, Victorine would be the woman with parrot, a pensive character smelling a bouquet of violets. She disappeared for several years. Apparently she went traveling in America. She posed at Manet's one last time in 1873 for The Railroad. She played a young mother leaning back against a fence that runs along the railway yard behind the Gare Saint-Lazare. Victorine began to paint. She exhibited at several salons. These paintings have undoubtedly been lost. In 1890, aged 46 and an alcoholic, she was described as a shapeless old lady. She disappeared without trace. Manet must have been attracted by the expressiveness of Victorine's face, as well as by her calm immodesty, which resulted in the two most scandalous nudes of his age. The Salon was the only means of being officially recognized as a painter. The members of the jury voted by raising their hands in front of the paintings presented by the commissioners. In April 1863, the jury only selected half of the 5,000 paintings presented. The number of rejections caused an outcry. Emperor Napoleon III ordered a special exhibition to be held of the works refused, including those of Whistler, Pissarro, and Jonkind. At the Salon des Refus, there were two of Manet's Spanish paintings, Young Man in the costume of a maillot, Mademoiselle Cinq in the costume of an espada, as well as Le Bain. Le Bain was greeted with hostility and derision. At the age of 31, Manet became famous. The second nude was painted immediately after Le Bain, at the time of the scandal, but Manet only presented his painting to the Salon 2 years later, in 1865, together with Christ Outraged. Wishing no doubt to defy the painter's stubborn determination, the jury accepted both pictures. Manet submitted his nude under the title Olympia. He had the first verse of a poem, Olympia, the Girl of the Islands, by his friend Zacharias Truc, printed in the catalogue and on the poster. Who wishes to greet the day, delicious to see, the august young woman in whom the flame keeps watch. The august young woman describing this unabashed, arrogant nude caused much mirth. Critics and caricaturists had a field day. This redhead is positively ugly, her face is stupid, her skin deathly pale. The mob, as at the morgue, crowds around the spicy Olympia and the frightful Ecce Homo by Manet. The white, the black, the red. Mr. Manet will not hold a grudge against us for having doubled up with laughter in front of his Olympia. The violence of the reactions, of the 60-odd reviews, only 4 were favourable, makes us wonder how the painting may have been perceived. Olympia was the automaton who sang to delight and torment one of the heroes of Hoffmann's tales. Olympia was the nickname Victor Hugo gave himself. Olympia, portrait of a palpable nude woman, could be a realist manifesto against the misty romanticism of the day. The name evokes Olympus and infers an ironic distance from the bodies of ancient goddesses. When Manet painted Olympia, another goddess, Venus, painted by Alexandre Cabanel, met with immense success at the 1863 Salon. It was purchased by Napoleon III in person. She has outstretched arms to make her breasts more prominent, hairless armpits, exaggeratedly long hair, an arched body to emphasize her hips and flatten her stomach, clenched thighs to hide her pubis, long legs, and pointed feet so as not to break the line. A nude in a conventional academic pose. Whereas Manet's Olympia has short legs, a round stomach, small hips, strong hands, a grey line starting at the navel, pale nipples, downy red hair on her armpits, delicate narrow shoulders, a fairly thick neck, a square face with pale lips and pointed chin. All these traits, which do not correspond to any classic canon, are those of a real woman, and this was one of the reasons for the scandal. No concessions to prettiness, nor to a sort of ideal beauty. This simple, vulgar beauty was considered dirty and obscene. Very close to the empty centre of the painting, designated by the golden arrow marking the background, lies Olympia's hand. Out of tradition, modest Venus hides her pubis with her hand, but Olympia hides hers in an indifferent and provocative manner, and this feature also shocked the critics of the time. This Olympia, a sort of female gorilla, a grotesque in India rubber, outlined in black, totally naked on a bed, her hands spread in a kind of immodest contraction. This hand in the center of the canvas is like a spider in a web. It hides and reveals at once. The hidden object reappears in various elusive forms. The bouquet, symbol of payment for sex. The black ribbon, so easy to untie. The pink ribbon, which some people took for an orchid, a flower with sexual forms. Evoking another of Manet's paintings, Lola de Valence, Baudelaire also caused a scandal when he spoke of a pink and black jewel. Indeed, rather than the mediocre poem by Astruc, Olympia evoked the flowers of evil, banned 6 years earlier by the courts. The beloved was naked, and knowing my heart had returned only her vibrant jewels. Like Baudelaire, Manet was fascinated by cats. He often sketched them. I would love to have lived with a young giantess, around her feet like a cat to a queen, voluptuous. Treated in a caricatural manner itself, the cat in Olympia inspired the critics. It is Venus with black cat. At that time, loose or venal women were known as chattes, or pussies, and in French slang the word referred to a woman's sexual organs. Another echo. Olympe is a companion of Marguerite Gautier, the camellia of Alexandre Dumas' Fils' novel. Olympia would be the nom de guerre of a courtesan, which is what the critics of the day believed. What is this odalisque with the yellow stomach, a base model picked up I know not where, who represents Olympia? Olympia? What Olympia? A courtesan, no doubt. An additional clue that represented space. A watercolour of 1863 shows the first stage of the painting. The centre is open. There is perhaps a door or mirror behind Olympia. Between 1863 and 1865, Manet closed off the background. We're in a narrow boudoir leading to another space, which can be made out behind the edge of the curtain. This type of device evokes a brothel and its series of alcoves. From the advent of popular photography, courtesans and models even had photographs of themselves taken in similar poses and decors. Olympia stares at the spectator. This too was considered shocking. Her gaze implies the presence of a spectator who is captivated by the scene. What is happening exactly? The visitor has just been brought into the alcove. The black servant holds a half-unwrapped bouquet and tries to catch the attention of Olympia. Who brought this bouquet? The man looking at the courtesan, or a rival, another client? Visitors to the salon indignantly refused to be likened by the painter to the client of a brothel. Manet, who was devastated by the numerous negative reactions, kept Olympia in his studio. Having had his work rejected for the 1867 Universal Exposition, the painter followed the example set by Courbet 12 years previously and had his own pavilion built at the Place de l'Alma. Olympia was exhibited and was greeted with the usual jibes. Manet received the support of Émile Zola, who wrote the brochure for his exhibition. It featured one of Manet's etchings. Olympia again. In a portrait of Zola that Manet had begun the same year, the painter reproduced his painting in the form of a photograph or a coloured print. This time she seems to have her eyes turned towards Zola by way of thanks. Zola only discussed the picture in terms of technique. You needed a nude woman and you chose Olympia, the first one you came across. You needed light and luminous patches and you put in the bouquet. You needed black patches and you placed a negress and a cat in the corner. What does all this mean? You don't really know. Neither do I. As for Manet, he persisted with his false modesty. I render the things I see as simply as possible. So what can be more naive than Olympia? I'm told it has a certain harshness. It was there, I saw it, I painted what I saw. Manet died in 1883. 5 years later, the painter's widow was planning to sell Olympia to an American collector. Claude Monet immediately organized a fund to purchase the picture and offer it to the Louvre. Painters and writers alike responded to his appeal. The picture was hung in the Musée du Luxembourg. After several years of discussions and administrative wrangling, it was transferred to the Louvre. It was then exhibited in the Jeu de Paume, before finally ending up in the Musée d'Orsay. The painting is 1 meter 30 by 1 meter 90. The model is thus represented as almost life-size. Manet primed his canvases with a pale colour, either blue-grey or cream-grey. He drew the forms and then divided up the different planes with a light brown pigment. Next, he covered the surfaces with translucent colours diluted with turpentine. Finally, he completed his composition with the aid of thicker, oilier paint. Manet used 3 different manners in Olympia. The backgrounds are flat, uniform surfaces marked with large black or blue strokes for the green curtain, or strewn with lozenge-shaped floral motifs for the dark brown wallpaper. Another manner was the elusive touch. Manet had seen Velázquez's Infanta in the Louvre. He used the same type of brushwork in Olympia, for the ribbon and several details. From close up, they appear to be rough daubs of colour. From far away, the strokes merge together and create the illusion of a bouquet, braid, or the tassels of a silk shawl. The X-ray of the picture reveals its structure. Smooth, broad strokes punctuated the tucked or hanging parts of the sheet. These images give the impression the painting was rapidly executed with a sure hand and bold strokes. Indeed, Monet testified, "Manet always wanted his pictures to give the impression they had been painted in one single sitting, but he often scraped off what he had just executed, only keeping the first layer on which he would begin improvising again." Victorine's face gives a surprising blurred X-ray image, no doubt the result of several layers being scraped off before the final version. The last of the manners of painting, the surface of the body. Manet endeavoured to make his nude as compact and smooth as possible, with small blended strokes. In several places, low-angled light reveals the curved traces of the paintbrush, proof that Manet smoothed out the fresh paint. Lastly, the contours are clearly represented by a black or blackish-brown line. Manet used a wide range of pigments at this time, but he mixed them in order to obtain a limited number of tonal effects. Olympia's skin is milky and pink with light blue reflections. These hues contrast with the pillows and sheets. The white surfaces are marked with bluish folds and raised patches, tempered here and there by warmer shades of grey. Dense brown tone for the servant, delicate reflections on the eyes and the lower lip. The earring adds a bright amber-coloured light to the face. The The dark green background contrasts with the warm colour of the face, as does the pink dress with the blue flowers. The bouquet is a sort of palette of more vivid tones designed to enliven the whole surface of the painting as the still life did in Le Déjeuner sur l'herbe. Manet painted Olympia on dark, almost black backgrounds. or, on the contrary, on bright white. According to tradition, in order to be legible, Olympia's hair, the servant's face, and the cat should have stood out against lighter backgrounds. The painting is also a graphic work. The black ribbon around Olympia's neck is a sort of sign of this series of contrasts. 2 red chalk drawings preceded the painting. In the first, the face is empty. The leg is raised up to hide the stomach. In the second, squared for transfer, the face is filled in and the left arm has disappeared. On the picture itself, Manet painted the face from the front and lowered the right thigh. Other drawings made before or after developed the same theme. Woman with a cat. The odalisque. Goya had undressed his Maya and exhibited her without any shame. And Manet undoubtedly knew of La Grande Odalisque by Ingres. But he drew on an even older pictorial tradition. At the beginning of the 16th century, Giorgione painted a sleeping nymph in a landscape. Titian took this as his model for the Venus of Urbino. In Manet's day, this allegory of a goddess of domestic love and fidelity was interpreted as the portrait of a courtesan or a favorite in a moment of nonchalant invitation or autoeroticism. The young Manet had copied it several years before painting Olympia on a trip to Florence. Manet did not conceal the inspiration for his composition. The frame cutting off the bed, a panel on the left closes off the background, a raised fold of the sheet revealing the 2 mattresses, 2 pillows, the position of the right elbow, the left hand, the legs crossed. But on the right-hand side of Titian's painting, a loggia opens onto the sky. Marble flooring draws the eye towards the center of the composition. Manet closed off this part with a green curtain. He only kept one of the 2 servants and placed her closer to the bed. In the place of the sleeping dog, curled up by his mistress's feet, Manet painted a standing cat on the lookout. Olympia does not hold a small bouquet of roses, but the edge of a flowery shawl. And it is the servant who presents the bouquet. Titian painted his model from above, so the surface of the bed was visible. Seen from the side, the bed of Olympia is 2-dimensional. 2 details were also foreshortened, the right arm and the hand hiding the stomach. So the painter's eye is situated roughly at the level of the model's navel. Manet worked in a seated position, with Victorine posing on a high bed. Here he broke with tradition yet again. From Titian to Goya, the painter's eye always looked down on the model. In a modern Olympia, Cézanne translated this image of a dominating idol by raising her even higher. In a sketch, Picasso showed the servant lying down and placed himself next to the bed. Giorgione, Titian, Goya, Manet, Cézanne, Picasso. It is as if each generation of painters had passed on this secret. During his apprenticeship, the young Manet copied Titian's Venus of Pardo and Delacroix's The Barque of Dante at the Louvre. He later abandoned these scholarly exercises. Goya's Two Maras on a balcony inspired his own balcony, the 3rd of May, the execution of the Emperor Maximilian. he invented authentic modern replicas of the old master's works and a new pictorial language. But the dialogue was not only with the paintings of the past. When, 2 years after Le Bain, his friend Monet painted his Déjeuner sur l'herbe out of doors, Manet, who saw himself as the master of the new Impressionist painting, promptly renamed his painting Le Déjeuner sur l'herbe. Later, Manet also worked out of doors in Argenteuil, where the idea of Olympia was born. He used the new technique he himself had launched of applying large patches of bright colour. And so he became part of a movement of which until then he had steered clear. He had a similar experience with Courbet. The two painters really liked each other. However, Courbet found Olympia as flat as the Queen of Spades. He wanted to paint a truly sensual nude by returning to a theme which he'd already dealt with, woman with parrot. Manet responded with his own Woman with Parrot. It featured the scandalous Victorine Olympia again, but this time dressed in a pink satin from head to toe. It was a manner of saying that art does not necessarily arise from a provocative subject. Perhaps the cat in Olympia was also part of this subtle game. It has the alarmed and cautious look of the cat in Chardin's The Skate. It is there, by the side of Olympia's naked reclining body, like the other is by the side of the hanging and opened body of the large fish with human features. Olympia could be a sort of dream in an imaginary story of painting. A story where paintings echo each other in a never-ending chain, only changing through the need for perpetual renewal.